This is Building KC with Doug Wilder.
All right, good morning. I'm Doug Wilder. I am the VP at our division here with CKF in Lenexa. This podcast is called Building KC. I'm here with our very special guest, Shawn Woods from Ashlar Homes. He's their CEO. So welcome, Shawn.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm super glad you came over here. The reason I wanted to, this is our first podcast. The reason I wanted to start with you is when I met you several years ago, I recognized that you really are passionate about KC, building in this market, building affordable homes and quality homes. So when I hadn't even met you, and I went through your neighborhood in Green Hills, was just getting to know this area myself, and walked through your houses in Green Hills, and I just noticed the framework, the siding, different stages of the houses that I recognized that were of quality at that particular price point. So I really appreciated that. So I was glad that you and I were able to hook up and form a partnership in business. So let's just start. Why don't you give us a little history of yourself and the beginnings of Ashlar Homes?
Okay. So I've been around home building my entire life. My dad was a builder. My grandpa was a cabinet maker. Grew up doing odd jobs, picking up trash, running a little bit of equipment, hanging vinyl siding, and then decided in high school I didn't want anything to do with that. My dad didn't want me to have anything to do with it, so I went to college looking for something different, and graduated from college, played baseball in college, and then graduated and worked at the Federal Reserve for a couple years, and then worked at a private company for a couple of years, and then home building's kind of it's a crazy thing. Once it gets in your blood, you kind of can't get it out. So I found myself on lunch hours at the Fed going shopping for shoes, and I hate shopping. So obviously there was something wrong. I needed to get out of the office. So once I did that, I realized, I need to get back in this business. It's a lot of fun. So joined my dad in 1999 in his company. His company was T.E. Woods Homes. So started there in 99 as doing his books, and then slowly started learning what it meant to be a project manager in the field. And my dad's company was a lot like Ashlar's. He developed and he built and had his own sales team and things. So did that from 99 till 2010. And most of you that are around home building know there was a pretty big disruption in the market in 2006, 2007. So his company experienced that. My dad was at the time running for to be president of the National Association of Home Builders. That would have been back in like 2010, 11. So when that happened, we were still experiencing the downturn basically in 2009 and 2010. So he retired, went on to be chairman of NHB, and when he retired, I bought two of his projects, two of his subdivisions, and that's how Ashlar started. So took out on my own in 2011, and I think that first year we built like 5 houses. So we were pretty small at the time, but yeah. So now Ashlar's grown into, I think this last year we did about 125 homes, and we've got 2 or 3 communities of our own and our own sales team. So it's been a fun ride.
What quick question? The major in college was what?
It was business management.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So that helped you as you went into the career of home building for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know that there was anything that I learned in college that I took into the business, but definitely just the semantics of organizational management and all the facets of it, and that's kind of how I'd say I run a business too. I'm not a master of any of the things, but I know a lot about I know a little bit about a lot of the areas of home building, which makes it to where I can manage it fairly well.
The name change to Ashlar, where'd that come from?
So at the time, my dad had a project in Kansas City, Kansas that was all brick community, and Ashlar is a really old form of masonry. It's like a cut stone that's a perfectly square stone. So that was one of the projects that we stayed in to build in. So first glance was we wanted to do stuff that had all masonry on it at some way, shape, or form. So that's how we came out with that name. And then slowly as the company grew and changed, we became much more focused on affordability and the deeper side of the market. And so while we still do have masonry on some of our houses and we still build in that all brick community, we kind of diverged where we weren't doing masonry on the full house.
Yeah, I like that. That's a unique name.
Yeah.
Way to keep the trades kind of in the name itself.
Yep.
What it was really tough, that downturn in all communities. I'm originally from Omaha, moved to KC. How was your father and the company able to kind of stay afloat through all that?
Well, ultimately they didn't. His company filed for bankruptcy at the very end, but really I think in hindsight, we could have made it through. We had a couple of really friendly banks that were working with us to where we were building houses for cost and, just giving ourselves overhead and then paying those banks back. And that was successful. We built all those banks that did that. We built them out of their projects and they got all their money back. But then we had a couple of other banks that weren't as friendly. And so we ended up filing for bankruptcy thinking that we could save the company doing that. And it ended up being a bad decision. But, it was something that I think we could have made it through if we would have had friendly banks with us all the way through.
With that happening, what gave you the confidence to get back into it?
Yeah, I mean, when that happened, my wife and I had long nights of discussing, is this what I want to continue to do? Can I do this? Is this crazy? And I looked at Habitat for Humanity. I looked at all kinds of different jobs out of the industry, in the industry. And then it just came down to, again, it gets in your blood and you love it. And so I thought, well, I can do this and I'll just build 5 or 6 or 7 homes and we'll be fine. And, it started there and it just slowly started growing. And 10 years later or 15 years later, this is where it's at.
So in the early beginnings, what's the staff look like at Ashlar Homes?
It was just me when I restarted. Yeah, it was just me. And then I think a couple years after that, I had a part-time bookkeeper join me, and that was, office was in the basement of my house. She'd come in a couple days a week and file and enter bills and things like that. But I was meeting with customers. I was doing all the draws. I was, doing the project management, pulling all the permits. I mean, I was basically doing everything. So
Wow, that's a lot of work.
yeah, it was fun though.
So let's talk about, I know most of your staff now, I think, and so let's talk about what you're trying to do with that culture, what you're developing at Ashlar Homes now.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, our passion is attainability or affordable homes, things that people can actually buy. I mean, my biggest concern right now in housing is, my kids' generation. There's no way they're going to be able to afford a house until they're 30 or 35, which is crazy. I mean, that's how most of America has built their wealth, is through their home, and so that really concerns me. So that's what we're trying to do at Ashlar with the team that we have set up. I mean, we're really highly focused on systems and efficiencies in the house. So every single house, it seems crazy. I tell people all the time, we're always looking for $50. I mean, it sounds stupid, but if you find $50 over 30 or 40 different trades on a house, you just saved enough money to make it mean something to somebody. So yeah, we're hyper focused on that, and we're hyper focused on building communities that people love. I always talk about when I was a kid, I lived in this neighborhood for, I don't know, when I was 5 years old to when I moved away to college. And I can still remember the kids I played with in that community. We had picnics as a community that were all kinds of fun, and you got to know your neighbors. And that's kind of what we're trying to recreate at Ashlar is neighborhoods that people love to be a part of. And it's something that, as an adult, they're going to look back to, and it's going to be a fond memory, hopefully, but also just hopefully give them a home they can actually afford to get into a house instead of, rent an apartment or whatever. And nothing wrong with renting an apartment. It's just we feel like that, people really, they invest in their community once they're an owner. Yeah. And so it makes for better school systems. It makes for better community events. It's a great thing.
Well, that sense of pride of ownership and everybody collectively in that subdivision headed in the same direction, I think you're right. I think it really lends to a stronger community for sure.
Exactly.
I feel the same way. When I was a kid, everything was pretty tight in our neighborhood, and everybody got along. We knew everybody. So with that said, I've noticed how hard you guys work to build an affordable house, but I also know the costs that are involved today to try to build a house, and I would agree with our young kids trying to buy houses. It just seems tragic that it's not going to happen. So what's your approach with that, and how has it been received? Do your homeowners, I guess, I want to say, do they recognize how hard you're working to hit that price point and get them into something affordable they can build and stay in for years and add to?
Yeah, I don't know if they recognize it. I mean, we have had a couple people say, "How do you do this so cheap?" Yeah. And it's like, well, it takes a lot of work. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we're always looking at floor plans. We're always looking at efficiencies of taking parts and pieces out. Or one of the things that kills price of houses a lot of times is just wrong house on wrong lot. Like if you try to put a split level on a lot that needs to be a walkout, or vice versa. So that's where the land development comes in nice, is that like we're pre-planning our developments to say, these are the houses that have to go on these lots. And while they're there mass grading, we're mass grading those lots to make sure they're done right for that particular product. So yeah, it's a lot of a lot of thought and a lot of procedures. And then, I think some of our trades get a little frustrated with us at times too, because it's not we can't go to the old method of, hey, send us an invoice when you're done and this is what the price is going to be. We're so tight on what we're doing. We have to know up front exactly what, exactly what spec we're putting in that house, exactly what the trade is expecting, and exactly what the cost is going to be for us to do it. Because we can't miss anything by, $500 or $1,000. That's a big number to us. So, yeah, it's just a different approach. I mean, it's more planning and doing everything up front instead of as the process is going. Yeah, customers a lot of times ask us why we have to have our selections before we'll dig the basement, and it all just comes down to we have to know everything that's going into the house before we move forward, because it all goes together in some way, shape, or form. And if we don't have it when we need it, or it's costing more than we thought it was going to, we can't do it.
Well, I love the approach of the $50 item, because you're right. All those little bitty details, that little bit of money adds up pretty quickly when you start talking about 150 homes. So that's a great approach. It seems like your staff has really bought into that approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think they all realize that, it definitely is the little things. The big things are easy most of the time. It's the little things that are hard. So, having a process that actually works, that we do it repetitively every single time, but then also always looking for ways to be more efficient, be faster. I mean, that's some of the stuff we preach too is, we can't take 8 months to build a house. We have to take 4 months. I mean, that's how we turn money fast enough that we can bring the prices down to where we do, and, make it something that, somebody that's living in an apartment or just sold their house, sometimes they can't wait 8 months to a year. So we need to be diligent in what we're doing and be speedy. And the only way you can do that is through a lot of planning.
Well, I hope eventually the customers and the home buyers start to recognize that, because I see it personally how hard you guys work in trying to be affordable. How you guys, get to that price point. I'm just like, I'm not sure how you guys have gotten there. So,
Yeah.
Congratulations to you and your team, because I know how difficult it is.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's fun, but it's hard too at the same time.
Yeah, it's a lot of attention to detail.
Yep.
What about the parade of homes when you guys do those? You enjoy doing those? Does it help the process of building and showing those homes to your home buyers?
I'd say, I mean, a good description of the parade, it's kind of bittersweet. Parades are kind of a necessary evil. You have to participate in them because that's where majority of the people are out looking at houses. Most of the time on the parade, most of those people that are out looking are just looking for what's the newest thing, what are the decorating ideas, what's the newest color. They're not particularly looking for a new home probably.
Purchase, yeah.
But you have to have that recognition of where the community's at, how they can get to it, things like that. So the traffic that the parade produces is great. And actually this parade was probably the most successful parade we've ever had as far as sales go. I mean, normally what happens is you have tons of traffic on the parade, and then the sales will come, 2 or 3 weeks or a month or two later. And this parade, I think we ended up selling 7 or 8 houses during the parade, which is not typical. So yeah, that was pretty exciting to see.
So how do you pick your subdivisions? Because I would assume being in the right area will be as important to the sales and those neighborhoods as not picking a great area.
Yeah, that's another balancing act we go through, because we can't afford to pay crazy amounts of money for the land and get to the price we're achieving. So we have to be really diligent in looking for, areas that have good schools, that the utilities are there, because we can't have a bunch of offsite costs either. So it's hard. I mean, we look at, gosh, 20, 30, 40 projects before we actually commit to one, because, we definitely want good school districts. We want as close to the city as we can get, but oftentimes we have to be out on the fringes to get to the price point that we need. So, it's a balancing act of, okay, if the price is here, will this project work or not? And if it's $10,000 or $20,000 more for the house because we moved into a more expensive area as far as the land goes, or more infrastructure we have to put in, probably doesn't work. I mean, that's the one thing for us is, our price point is we build from 280 to 600, but normally when we get up in that 525 to 600 range, we can't really compete with other builders that well, because those guys are doing a lot more custom options. They're doing a lot more intricate stuff that we don't do. So we've got to pay attention to what we're good at and stay down in those price points that we do, and we do really well.
But you prefer to buy the plot of land and develop that neighborhood yourself as to going into some infills in different subdivisions. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
a lot of times, like we're going into one right now in Dayton Creek, which is exciting. There's 20 lots left in there, but most of the time, what happens if we don't develop it, we end up with rules from the developer or the real estate community or something that prevents us to get to the price point we want to get to, and that's really why I started developing. Is when we first started, I was building in 2 or 3 or 4 communities that the developers had developed the land, and I was with a realtor, and we'd all sit down and talk, and they'd say, "Hey, I want the price to be this." And then all of a sudden they'd give you the list of 20 things that they absolutely had to have in the house to sell it. And you're like, I can't build that house for that much money. I mean, if you want all that stuff, it's going to be the exact same price as everything else you have. So we always were hitting roadblocks of saying, hey, we want to be at this price point, but the only way to get there is we got to take some stuff out of the house. So when we develop our own properties, we make sure we set the HOAs up that we can make the decisions on how the house is going to be outfitted, and that allows us to build a product that people can actually afford. So, third car garage is not an option on a couple of our houses, on a couple of series of our houses. Get up into our upper price point, yeah, you can get a third car garage. And then our lowest price, it has it's horizontal vinyl siding, which is a bad word in Kansas City, but for the rest of the country, that is what a low maintenance siding is what should go on that house. I mean, for one, it looks nice when it goes on, but for two, the lower price points, they're not going to pay $5,000 to $8,000 to repaint their house in 5 years. So it's going to look terrible. So for us, when we've developed that whole neighborhood, we got to make sure that we're putting products on there that 10, 15, 20 years from now, it's going to look like the day we left it, which is what we're trying to achieve. But we also just need to have the freedom to build the houses that we can build for that price point. And when you're buying from other developers, a lot of times they put up roadblocks to where you can't do that, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, the siding that you use and the products that you use all lends to the affordability of that price point that you're trying to hit.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it's both to the affordability and to we know our buyer. I mean, a lot of our buyers are, either empty nesters, they're moving down to something, or they're first-time home buyers. And the empty nester doesn't want to paint their house. They don't want to mess with the maintenance of it anymore, and the first-time home buyer probably doesn't know how. So for us, it's both things. It's lending itself to a lower price for us, but it's also making it to where we're getting them into a house that they can actually take care of. They can change the furnace filter. They don't have to paint it. So it's the little things to try to coach them into the ownership process, and that's definitely a learning curve too. To have to take care of a house it's not something you can just snap your fingers out and have it happen.
Yeah. Do you feel like most of your first-time homeowners are going to be in your houses fairly long term? Are they looking to build equity and move up, or?
I think we have both ends. Like I said, the people moving down, I think that's their permanent home. I hope that the ones we're building for that are first-time home buyers, the young ones, I hope that's not their forever home. I mean, I think that's the one misnomer a lot of people have, is they think that, everybody complains about lower-priced houses. A lot of cities don't want lower-priced houses, and I think they miss the boat that housing is a system. I mean, you have to have the lower price to start with, and then once those people live in that house for 2 or 3 or 4 years, they get a better job, they get a raise, keeping up with the Joneses, whatever. They want to move up to another house, which I hope is what they do. So, a lot of times we talk about we want repeat customers, which is great. We can probably have a repeat customer one time, but I hope they go to a $750,000 house or $1 million house if they can afford it, and that's what they want. Great, but I'm not going to be their builder at that point. But that's how that housing system works. They got to start somewhere, build the equity, and then start moving up. And I hope that's what they do.
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier. It's about getting some of the renters out of the apartments that can buy that first-time home and aren't scared of or can't afford the $500,000 to $600,000 house, but can get into that price point, build some equity, and then advance not just their career but in their home as well. So when we talk about affordability, a lot of things been going on in Kansas City with the new energy codes and some of the permitting issues, and maybe speak to that. How are we able to build? How are you able to build an affordable house with all this new energy codes coming in, and where's that at with?
Kansas City, Missouri has passed the 21 energy code. I mean, there's some discussions now where we're trying to give an alternate path that would help in the affordability for sure. I'm probably the worst person in the world to talk on energy codes, because I think that it's funny to hear our president and our city councils and our governors and all them, they talk about how affordable housing is like the hottest topic in the world. And then 5 minutes later, they want to add an energy code on top of the house to, save the planet, which is great. I mean, I'm all for saving as much energy as we can, but I don't feel like you can have both things to the extreme that we're trying to do it at the same time. We have to focus on first getting to an affordable product. And then once we get to the affordable product, if you want to try to improve it slowly, then that's great. But I think the thing that people miss is, even without the energy code or what are called stretch codes. I mean, you have a life safety code, which almost nobody disagrees with the life safety code, but you have these other codes that can be added on top. Energy code is one of them. It's called a stretch code. I think people just lose sight of the fact that, like, you realize, even in the Kansas City, Missouri energy code, like my least expensive house to do in KCMO now because of the energy code is going to cost the customer about $13,000 or $14,000 extra to build it with the energy code on it. Well, if you take that into a mortgage and you finance it over 30 years, and then you look at what they're saving energy-wise, they're going backwards. They're not saving as much money on their mortgage. They're not saving as much money on their utilities as they're having to pay in their mortgage. So for a first-time home buyer, that makes no sense. Right. So, you can make the most energy efficient house in the world, but if somebody can't afford it, what good does that do? That doesn't do anything. So yeah, Kansas City has been interesting. It's I'm hoping we can get the different path of compliance passed because it'll make it, for one, easier to get a permit. Unfortunately, Kansas City, Missouri is probably the hardest jurisdiction in the Kansas City metropolitan area to gain a permit in. So hopefully it'll make that process a little bit easier. But it also will give kind of a ramp up to the energy code, which is the way we should do it. I mean, we've forever in Kansas City, we have amended the energy codes back, which has been great. And I realize they're going to come at some point, some way, shape, or form. But to just throw the 21 energy code with no amendments in it that's a huge undertaking. I mean, it's a huge price shock to the system for one, but it's also a huge shock to the planning department and to the builders to try to adapt their plans to be ready for that. Some staged approach would be much better for that.
Well, and statistically, permit offerings have been way down in KCMO, right?
Oh my gosh.
Because of this?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, KCMO on average should be pulling about 80 permits a month. And so they started this in September. So what are we, like 7 months in? So they should have about 500 permits pulled. And I think at last check, they pulled 15. Oh, so yeah, they've, the thing is, a lot of people have the argument that the pricing problem in housing right now is supply. We need more supply, so the prices will regulate a little bit. So they basically just cut the supply off. There is no supply in Kansas City right now. So that's going to drive prices higher as well, even on top of the revisions we have to make for the energy code.
Yeah, reading all the posts about all that stuff has been interesting because it's like most cities are trying to generate that revenue and bring people into their city. And with so few permits issued, it seems like they're just going backwards, almost forcing builders to build outside of the KCMO area.
Oh, yeah. We actually have had a couple buyers that have chose to build outside of our KCMO communities just because they can build the same exact house for less money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tough argument, especially when, Kansas City, Missouri is trying to lead the Kansas City Metro and being the most energy efficient, which I think is great. It's a noble cause, but if you're going to do that, you have to have the best planning department, and they don't have that. They have probably the worst department as far as issuing permits and consistency and things. So when you try to do something to be the best and you're at the bottom of the pack elsewhere, that's really hard to, for a builder to swallow. If it was really easy to pull permits there and they were the best to work with in the world, then yeah, they'd probably be a little bit easier to swallow.
That other processes aligned for how they were going to want to do that.
Yep.
So I've read too where some of the talk, and I know you're not remodeling and working with older homes, but the talk is to maybe start upgrading some of those the 2021 energy codes with houses as they sell, the older houses. You have any thoughts on that? It seems
I don't. I think my biggest thing is as far as the discussions at the city council level and the energy people that are out pushing for these energy codes. It's just funny that Kansas City, Missouri pulls on average maybe 900 to 1,000 permits a year. Yet there's a stock of some 500,000 houses out there. So we're trying to fix this and push all this cost on these 1,000 houses a year, and we're not doing anything for these 500,000. We're not mandating anything there. So yeah, it's interesting to say how is this isn't going to save the planet. I mean, I would find it hard pressed to say how any energy upgrades in the houses is going to save us that much energy to make a dent in anything. But I mean, if we're going to do that, you'd think you would attack the biggest number first and then go after the smallest, especially because, housing, like cabinets, anything, it has technology advances all the time. I mean, we have to upgrade our AC units. I can 5, 6, 7 years ago, they were 10 SEER, then they were 13s, then they were 14s. And that's government stuff that's making us upgrade those. So we're getting upgrades inside the house every year anyways, without the codes being updated. So, a house that we build this year is much more energy efficient than something we did 5 years ago. So if you just let that progression continue to happen and then focus on that huge amount of housing stock that was built 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 100 years ago, that's the stuff that needs to be upgraded.
Well, I agree. I think when you start having people in those communities start upgrading their HVAC systems or their roofs or their siding or their windows, all that stuff could be implemented. They may not like it, but it would make more sense. But codes typically, sometimes common sense is thrown out the window, it seems like, in the building industry.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that somehow either builders and developers have been really quiet and not fought back on stuff, or we're just really easy to throw a bunch of costs at. I mean, I always think it's funny on, and I'm gonna date myself, but back when I started building, I think a permit was like $450 when I first started, and there weren't water tap fees, there weren't sewer tap fees, and things like that. And now, gosh, a permit's not bad now. Most cities, the permit's somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500, but now you have a water tap and you have a sewer tap that's like $10,000, $12,000, which is crazy. As a developer, we paid to put the lines in the ground. The city doesn't pay for that. We paid for it. And then they're making us pay another fee to tap a line that we put in the ground. And I think most of that is generated from the city needed to raise prices to maintain their system. Mm-hmm. And instead of going and raising somebody's water or sewer bill, it's just easier to throw a fee on the developer and say, hey, you pay this $10,000 and that'll help us upgrade our system over here. And it's like, gosh, we're killing ourselves on all these fees we just throw on a new house when it's really system stuff that needs to happen across the board. So, and I feel like that's the same thing on the energy code. We're throwing all this, we're going to fix all this and make it perfect 50 years from now, but we're not doing anything to the stuff that's, existing.
Well, do you in your experience, are the people making these rules and these codes and the councilmen and women, or I'm not sure a lot of them come from a building background?
Oh, no, they don't. And I think that's the biggest frustration is that we have city councils and, just people making code, even the code bodies of like the IECC and stuff, the way they're made up now, they're made up of not all building professionals. They're, manufacturers are in there and things like that. So it becomes a very hard process to be objective and good. But yeah, I wish codes were done at a state level or by, an educated board would be great, because when you're talking to a city council person about a code issue, it's hard enough for a builder to know all the codes and understand them. So for a city council person that's not versed in it, to have them voting on what they should and shouldn't do as far as codes, it's almost impossible to give them all the information they need to make an educated decision. So yeah, it becomes extremely frustrating, and especially in Kansas and Missouri, we're home rule states. That's not normal in the country. Most countries have a state code. So, for the HBA and builders and developers, it becomes a really hard fight to, on Monday night, Blue Springs is talking about codes. So you got to go discuss and fight over the codes there. And then 3 days later, Overland Park's going to talk about it. You got to go over to Overland Park, and then Lee Summit's coming 3 months later, and you got to jump and go to Lee Summit. So it's just it's a never ending battle, unfortunately.
Well, I always felt like, with the passion that the HBA members have, that they should be part of all those collective changes, and maybe legislation, and maybe some of that stuff even generated from those folks, since they're in it every day and they understand it and they be common sense about it. They'd also know what was affordable, what was right, what was wrong, and kind of set the direction of that tone.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if every municipality would ask for, a local home builder or a local developer to sit on their committee that's looking at codes or something, just somebody that could be in there during the discussions to at least be a voice of reason of, you do know you're affecting the price this much. And, the funny thing in KCMO is HPA's put out pricing of what we feel like the price is going to increase due to the 21 energy codes. And everybody just keeps telling us that we're crazy and those aren't real numbers. And it's, they'll take the they'll take the Department of Energy's number that they generate in Washington, but us local builders, when we're putting those numbers out there, they're like, it doesn't cost that much. I'm like, yeah, it does. I mean, and the problem is, people don't understand that Kansas City doesn't build a house like everywhere else in the country. So for us to change from the way that a current builder is building a house and then throw all those energy codes on, that's a substantial price increase. I mean, it's much different than, what maybe Colorado and how they build the houses today. You can't take a national average like that and look at it, particular to Kansas City. So,
well, with that said, Kansas City's not a huge pre-finish market, but you, even before you did business with us, you were doing pre-finished cabinetry. What made you step out of that?
So, I mean, back to my dad's day, my dad's company used pre-finished cabinets at the very end, and back then we caught a lot of flack for it. People were like, "These are cheap cabinets. These are terrible." And in my opinion, a pre-finished cabinet is way better than a shop-built cabinet and then painted on site. And probably nothing against the shop-built cabinet itself. It's just the finish process when it comes to the job site and trying to finish that thing in an environment that's, it's dirty. It's got all the hardware stuck on it already. So there's no way you can paint the whole thing correctly. So, I feel like the pre-finished it's a much better cabinet. But, it's just another one of those things for us that we can do the pre-finished cabinets at the same price as what we can do shop built, but it speeds us up and it makes warranty a lot easier. So we can go faster inside the process. We bring the cabinets in at a later stage in the house, which leads to less damage. And then if we have somebody that has a defective door or something 2 or 3 years down the road, we're not trying to match paint to it or anything like that. We can easily order it and get it changed out. So yeah, for our business model, we could probably function with a shop built cabinet, but man, it would be hard. It would be really hard.
Well, there is a negative connotation to pre-finish when, it's just a box cabinet, but nowadays a lot of them are as custom as anything they'll build in the shop. And of course, I think you're right. I've always told people I don't bring home an unfinished car and want to paint it myself at my house. So, the finishes are top notch, but, and most of the country does it that way anyway. So, and if they're building home in other parts of the country, it's just still kind of a stronghold here in Kansas City.
We're stubborn builders in Kansas City. We're hard to get to change, unfortunately. Which, I mean, that's good and bad. But yeah, it's a hard market to change for sure, and it's just a different market, which is good too. I mean, there's a lot of small custom builders here, and I think that's what the buying public gets accustomed to.
Well, what I like across the board is all the people I've ran into building wise, they're very KC centric. I mean, this is their community. They really support it. They believe in it, and so I think that's why there's a little bit of stubbornness to that.
Yeah. I think as a whole, I mean, I think Kansas City probably builds one of the better homes in the country as far as the quality of the house and the craftsmanship that goes into it. So yeah, people are pretty passionate about that here.
Just curious, were you, to date us both, but block foundations early on were home, how they started off with homes. Did that happen around down here at all?
I don't know. I never experienced it. I mean, ever since I've been around it, it's been poured foundations, so I haven't experienced it.
What about you were HBA president a couple years ago?
Yep.
Speak to that experience.
I think that was 2019. It was fun. Took a little bit of time. I mean, there was a lot. I kind of felt like I had to go to most of the functions and be involved as much as possible, which took a lot of time, but it was fun. I mean, I think that it's tough for people to find the time to do that kind of stuff. But man, after you've done it, you look back and it's like, I met some really good people. I got involved in a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have got involved in. And I mean, I think if you would have talked to me 10 or 15 years ago about the HBA and NHB, I would have said, oh, they're great. They're fun organizations, but it's no big deal. But now, the older I get and the more stuff I fight, like the energy codes and things like that, I mean, we have to have them. I mean, HBA and NHB do so much for the building community and the development community that it's just ridiculous. And most guys don't even know what all they're fighting for. And I mean, it feels like we're constantly losing, unfortunately. But I mean, I think if we didn't have them, it'd be scary where our industry would be today. So yeah, great organizations that are fun to be a part of for sure.
Well, again, the people seem really passionate when I go to those functions, and everybody, although you're competitors, nobody in the room is really. You're all acting as the same community and a team, so it's fun to watch that I guess, brotherhood, if you will, of everybody that's in that room.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to get in those rooms sometimes and just hear we like to get into gripe sessions every now and again where everybody's griping
Sure.
about it, but it is funny how, I mean, for the most part, we all deal with the same problems and issues. So for us to not talk about those things and not try to fight them together is crazy. So that's what I think the HBA provides is, a sounding board for everybody getting on the same page and then, realizing we all have the same problems and we can help each other out to do that. I mean, I always say as a builder, I would definitely rather compete with a guy that he's educated, he knows what he's doing, and he's a professional home builder than the guy that has no clue what he's doing and, maybe a part-time job for him that he's out building a house. I don't want to compete with that guy because he'll beat me every time by dropping his price and not realizing he's not making money or things like that. So yeah, I want to definitely compete with professionals for sure.
Yeah, and it could take a while before he's out of business. And then you've lost some of that work for sure.
Exactly.
What, speak to, I was going to ask you about some of the, so KCML says they want to build 10,000 new low-income houses by 2027.
Mm-hmm.
Possible with the new energy codes?
Oh, I'm sure it's possible. I mean, I think the frustration is, and I'll show a little bit of my politics here. I don't understand why you would add more cost to a house when all they're going to do in that is they're going to have to end up subsidizing the price of those houses to get them to work. So the city is adding cost by making a mandate of how they want these things built. And then to make this thing work, they're going to come back to the builder or developer and say, tell us how much money you need to make this project work. And they could, by being more efficient in their processes and how you pulled permits and how you built the house and the quality that you built the house to, if they were more efficient in all those things, all those subsidies or a vast majority of those subsidies could probably go away. But it's like they don't think about that. Man, we just added $10,000 to this house, and now we're giving them $25,000 to build it, to subsidize it. So it's possible. I mean, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how much subsidy has to be there. And then I think that in its current state, there is no way Kansas City, Missouri can issue that many permits. They can't do it. Yeah. They're not set up. They're just not set up as a department that wants to say yes. They're more set up as a department that wants to find flaws and say no, it's a bad scenario to have, that ends up running builders out of the market that could be more competitive because the guys just don't want to mess with it. But also it's just really hard to pull that many permits when they don't have a passionate, customer service experience and trying to push permits out the door. That's what they're going to have to get to.
Yeah, it's too bad because the passion of the builders here in town they want to build. They want to put up homes and add to the inventory, not just residentially, but even the commercial contractors I've talked to. There's things they want to build and need permits for, and they're ready to move forward, and they just can't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas City has a lot going for it, so that's the unfortunate part. I mean, you look at the city and all the things they have going for it, and it's like, man, if you could just get this thing rolling the right direction to where, permitting was a much easier process. The scrutiny that plans were going through wasn't as hard. My dad always used to say that, Kansas City was the best advertisement or the best advocate for the suburbs because people didn't want to build in KC-Mo, so they'd go to Blue Springs or Lee Summit or Overland Park because it's much easier to build there. So yeah, I mean, if Kansas City could get that figured out, it'd be incredible to see what could happen there.
Well, and if you look at home prices in the East and West Coast, I mean, this is super affordable to own a home here in this Midwest region.
Yeah.
And so if they could get it figured out, they would really attract a lot of people and businesses.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen, many guys I've heard talking about that are around, the businesses that are coming to Kansas City to look to expand here, to add headquarters here. The first thing they ask for is like, where would my employees live? And we have affordable stuff that they can live in, but there's not that much inventory in the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And a lot of that is just, restricted by what we can and can't build there. So yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity is enormous here to, and that's the thing. I think that as always, instead of being the leader in energy efficiency, if we could be the leader in affordability as far as what houses we could put on the ground and how people can afford them, I think if somebody did that, and I'm not, Kansas City, Missouri, it could be Overland Park, it could be Lee Summit, whoever it is, I think if somebody would do that and they look back 10 years later, they would be like, oh my gosh, look what we just built. We built this thriving community We moved young people in, professionals that could afford a house and they could afford it 5 years earlier. They planted their roots in this community. I mean, it'd be an incredible experiment. I don't know how you do it, but it would be an incredible experiment.
Well, hopefully all you intelligent guys in the HBA can get together and hopefully figure this out.
Figure it out. It'd be fun.
I think it would. I think it's the direction it needs to go, especially for young people, because I think a lot of young people now are just giving up on buying a property.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. I mean, it's, gosh, it used to be, that was what you were striving to buy your first home. And I think some of them now just think it's so out of touch that they shouldn't even dream about it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's certainly not the American dream we grew up with.
Right. Yeah. And I think we got to change that somehow. I don't know how, but I mean, it definitely needs to be changed.
What's the future for Ashlar Homes looks like in the next 2-3 years? What do you see?
Hopefully growth. I mean, I do think the market's going to be good for the next 5 to 6 years. I believe it's not going to be great, but it's going to be good. And I think that we're going to continue to try to get smarter about the product that we're putting out there and try to even develop, less expensive product. And just because we're doing less expensive doesn't mean it's not exciting and look good and things like that. So that's always a challenge for us too, is making sure, when we're doing that whole community, we got to make sure everything looks good. But I just see more projects on the ground. I mean, we have one under contract in Blue Springs right now for a new project that's about 250 houses. So we're looking for 3 or 4 new projects. I hope that, like I said, we did 125, 130 last year. Hopefully, I don't know, in 2 or 3 years, I would hope we're at 200 or 250 homes. And I hope we become known as the person in Kansas City that can put out a really nice product, but do it that people can afford. That's what we're passionately driven for. So hopefully that's what we continue to do.
So one last question, Shawn. We all fail in life and business.
Yep.
What have you learned from some of those failures?
Oh man, I feel like I fail at something every week. So I think a lot of things I learned. Back from my father's company, I had to file for personal bankruptcy back then. So obviously not to overextend yourself. Make sure you're putting money away for rainy days, because it's going to come no matter what. I think most of all, I can't take stuff personally. I mean, I think for forever I would take stuff personally. When a customer was mad, it made me mad. It would upset me if an employee didn't like the way something go. It would upset me, and I'd get frustrated about it. I think maybe that's just part of me getting older, but it's like now I think I can lean back and listen to everything that they're coming up with, and not get frustrated and mad about it, but more be in a position to talk things out and figure out, okay, tell me your perspective and where you're coming from, and then I'll tell you my perspective. We may never agree, but at least I understand you've got a perspective and where you're coming from, instead of me trying to force my opinion on everybody is probably the biggest lesson I've learned.
Yeah, I always say argue to a resolution. Let's not argue to be right or wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
so-
And I'm at the point where I don't care if I'm right or wrong.
Exactly.
Let's just get this done with and move on to the next thing. So
In the same way, too many problems each day.
Exactly.
Worry if I'm right
There's
or
like
wrong.
15 of them on a stack. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate you doing this today. I love the product that you build. I love the passion that you put into it. I recognize it. I hope as homeowners walk through your homes, they also recognize what you guys are trying to put together. So
Yeah, I appreciate you doing it. It was fun. And we thank you for CKF. I mean, there's no way we could build half the houses we had if we didn't have great trade partners like you guys taking care of us. So yeah, we appreciate that very much.
no, it's been a fun relationship. So I appreciate it.
Yep. Great.
Thank you, Shawn.
Thank you.
Yep.